When did you first realize you were experiencing postpartum depression? How did it impact your daily life as a new parent?
Hmm. Well, for me, I realized I experienced postpartum like after everything when I finally got through it. And I realized that the time frame I was experiencing postpartum was not anything like how I was before. And it was completely different than how I felt after. So, it changed my day to day life. Because I just developed an attitude of resilience and gratitude. Yeah.
Like that. Um, when did I notice? So 70.9% of people can get the baby blues. And originally, that's what I would say I thought
Yeah.
it was. I think the biggest thing is that should only last about 2 weeks.
Right.
And once it started getting to like a month and a month and a half and 2 months, I'm like, all right, can't be in denial anymore. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Um, how did it change me? I mean, having a child in general changes you and changes everything about you, but I think that similar to what you said, I think I have to be more mindful and more intentional to get through my day to day than when you don't have that responsibility and that extra intention to give to another human being all the time.
Right. For sure.
Yeah.
I agree with you with the part of like everyone gets baby blues. I feel like that's normal, right? Because I mean, our hormones and everything changes during pregnancy. But I think it was like after the first couple of months is when I started to really feel like a dip in everything, like that loss of feeling motivated and things of that sort. And that's kind of how I'm like, oh, there's something not right here.
Right. I think exhaustion is one feeling, but you start to know when it's beyond that.
Right.
And when it's like, okay, this just doesn't feel right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say?
The feeling of never having enough time, always being out of time, always being exhausted, trying to find where you can steal some time from for yourself. It's always 11 o'clock at night or always 7 o'clock in the morning.
That's so true.
It's always 7 or 11. And
That's so true.
You start to feel like if I could steal 10 minutes here or there, then everything would be fake. Great. It's all fixed. Like, I'll be able to manage the day. I'll just get up earlier and you just keep doing it or trying to do it. And it's never enough. Never enough time.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there's a lot to juggle with parenting, especially in the beginning stages, because, especially for like your first child, when you kind of have to shift your mindset from being free and doing whatever you want to now like having to be responsible for another human that is not able to really do things for themselves. And I do think I found that to be, hard in terms of, you know, I felt like I lost myself for a little bit because I just had to figure out how to be a good parent. And I was always so worried about my baby. And I wanted for him to be okay that it was kind of like, oh, forget about me. I'll be fine no matter what. And I think it's those moments, like you said, right? Like 7 a.m. or 11 p.m. when the baby's sleeping. And then you finally have some downtime and then it kind of hits you, right?
Jamal Smart's iPhone.
It hits you and it's like, okay, now what am I supposed to do for me now? I'm tired, like right. That kind of thing.
Right. It's like you give everything you have and then what about me? Mm-hmm. Or am I going to choose to take a shower or wash the dishes? Right, am I going to choose to do something for myself or continue to be intentional for my baby even though I need 5 minutes, but it has to go to him? Yeah. Getting through those feelings is really hard. And I think it's funny when we use we lost ourselves because I felt that way for a while. Uh-huh. And it wasn't until I started letting go of the idea of losing myself and started saying to myself, like, no, this is a new self, right?
For sure.
So there's nothing to compare it to. When you're saying when you lose yourself, not you specifically, but in general, when we're saying the terms we lose ourselves, which is what I was saying to myself in the beginning, you start to get so like, oh my God, but what about the old me? But what about these things that I used to like? Now I'm even more stressed because who am I?
Right, for sure. I agree with that. That is so true. Even earlier when you spoke, you mentioned like the mourning of like the old you and like the welcoming of the new you, right? And I definitely agree to that for sure.
Yeah. It's a rebirth.
It is a rebirth.
Of the child and of yourself.
It's like a matter of perspective,
yes.
right? It's like choosing to be more optimistic, right? And it's, because I mean, like, you know, I feel like especially experiencing postpartum, you have to get to the point within yourself. I had to get to the point within myself where I choose to be positive, right? Like I choose to be optimistic. I choose to feel motivated, even though I don't, you know, I choose to just like have a better attitude. And with that, eventually comes like a better experience overall. So I definitely agree with that shift in the mindset.
And you know what's crazy? I find that when you have to do all that and you originally start out with doing it for your child, it then bleeds over and you open up like this new level of potential that you didn't even see before.
Right.
And so it's kind of crazy because it's like, oh my God, I'm so sad and I'm so stressed and I don't have enough time. But then on another hand, it's like, this is great. Like my heart has grown and like my intention has grown and I'm more focused. But how do you balance it? Right?
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of time, right? And just choosing to be, because I mean, look, let's be real. When you are anyone with depression, anyone who is just in a very difficult space, it's hard to do those things. But I feel like when you get to that point where you choose and you see like the fruits of your decision and the effort that you put in, it does make it easier. You do embrace that new rebirth of yourself, and it does trickle into all of your other experiences and relationships too. And you know, it eventually it comes together. Eventually it comes together and it can get better.
Okay. As people who are dealing with a 17-month-old now, so we're still in the thick of it. When would you say that like it got a better?
Okay, so I would say that it definitely got better after 2.
Okay.
I think by that time I had really just been able to recognize that I had experienced postpartum. And then at that point, it was kind of like, okay, well, here you are. What are you going to do? Are you going to sink? Are you going to swim? You have a family, you have a child, and you still have your personal goals that you had in place before you found yourself in this position. And I think, you know, considering that, and then like of course they grow, right? The babies grow and you kind of get used to certain things. You learn how to navigate and through their behaviors, and you learn how to understand their needs, right? And you kind of develop a way to balance giving to them and kind of giving to yourself a little bit, you know, like that comes with time. But I would definitely say like after 2, and then when they're walking around, it's fun, you know. It's beautiful to watch your baby, right, like grow and just do all these amazing things. And I think that too contributes to the ability to like really look at it as it gets better.
I like that.
Yeah. And once the child starts getting older, like 2 through 6, and when they need you a little less, you realize that you've built up a capacity to work through exhaustion. That if you can redirect that to whatever your original mission was before you had the child, your chances of succeeding are much greater now.
That's so
because
true.
You know how to work tirelessly. If you can put that 7 to 11 mindset on whatever it is that you wanted to do before, I think it definitely makes it more possible for you to succeed in whatever that may be, just having that mindset.
I think it's funny that you guys both said 2, because advice that someone gave me was pretty much wait a year until you make any rash decisions after you have a baby. Whether it's work, whether it's your relationship, whether it's anything, like wait a year. And I would even go as far as to say 2, because your body is still changing. Like, you're still getting used to these things. And honestly, it took for like 13, 14 months for me to even start feeling like kind of myself again. So I think that even stretching it to 2, just to give people a realistic time frame of what it takes to actually heal. Like, it's not 6 weeks, it's not 8 weeks. Right. It takes years. And honestly, let's be real, our bodies never go back to what they were before. Right. And dealing with that is hard. Yeah. So I think that's a good point of reference for sure.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Again, there's so many opportunities. And I think in the beginning, I feel like I love what you said about like the 13 months. You know, it's not 6 to 8 weeks, right? Like, so originally I thought like, okay, 6 to 8 weeks, I'll be fine. Exactly. No worries, I'll be able to jump right back in. But I feel like I almost went into shock, you know, where you're so busy going, right? That you don't even have time to really think of too deeply into things, especially when you bring a baby home. And then I feel like over time you do start to recognize as the baby is stabilized and you're like, okay, well, wow, this is so different than what I'm used to. And, you know, just finding your way to be able to accept the new everything that comes with it, you know. And I think I definitely can appreciate that, because it is hard, you know. It's hard. Women are so amazing, like, to carry a child and, you know, your body changes, you know, the hormones don't make it any easier because you're so emotional on top of it. So everything is like more dramatic, you know what I mean? But I definitely can appreciate what you said. And I think that that's a conversation that needs to be held more, you know, for women to understand that not everyone does snap back. You know, and that's okay. You know what I mean? It doesn't make you any less of a woman. It doesn't make you... It actually is a beautiful thing. Even stretch marks and things like that. You know, when you've never had that to when you do have it, it can be so difficult with society, how they make it seem like, okay, you know, they have the perfect and ideal image. But that's not always the case. You know, when you carry a life into the world, it's a beautiful thing. And I think that it would be nice for that to... I feel like now it's gotten better. I think it's gotten better.
No, for sure. People talk about it way more.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important to, like you said, because like miscarriages and demises where baby dies in the womb and you still have to deliver and all these things. When I started working in labor and delivery, I was shocked.
Wow.
At the amount of times that this happens, because I had no idea. Because people don't talk about it. And I feel like it's better now, which is great. But it's like, when you know how often some of these things happen, like, for example, a miscarriage, 1 in 4, right? You feel, I'm not going to say better, but you know that the possibility is high. And when it happens, it's not so much of like, oh my God, what did I do? It was this me? Did I cause this? And so the more that we share and the more that everyone opens up, even though I know it's hard, like, it even takes away the shame portion, because if everyone's going through it, how could you feel bad about that?
I love that. You know, I do think information is very important because, you know, I did have an experience with a miscarriage before having my son. And I did struggle with that, you know, because I was so excited, like, to have a baby. I've always wanted children. And then to have to walk back through that and explain to people that you're no longer pregnant, it just is so hard. And then to get pregnant after that again and have the fear to go ahead and, you know, be as happy and share that news with the fear of it could happen again. And then you have to keep reliving that traumatic experience. So I do agree that it would be helpful to have more of that information out so that people can have a better understanding, you know, and that can lead to better results. Even preeclampsia. Like, I had preeclampsia during my pregnancy. I was in a nurse at that time, so I had no idea. I'm like, what is going on? When they told me that I had a high-risk pregnancy, you know, my blood pressure was like through the roof. I'm talking about like 160/90, and you know, I was so swollen. Those things are very hard to experience, especially when you don't have that clinical background. So in order to understand it. and you've never had anything like that going on with you before, when you just see your body like go into those things, it's devastating. And that too contributes to, you know, not such a positive self-image of your body, because you're used to it being one way, and it's now not only are you pregnant, but now like your feet are swollen, you know, your whole body is swollen. Now they're telling you that you have to be careful because, you know, you can, you know, have a stroke or have a seizure, and it's just like, that's scary. So information is key, you know, and I do think that it's important for that to be told to more women so that they can feel empowered going into their pregnancy and take the proper precautions in order to have a healthier experience for themselves and the baby.
Absolutely. And I think that that's an important part, sorry, that you bring up, because sometimes we're so worried about things like the body, right? Like, oh my God, my body's swollen, right? And sometimes that's all you see. But it's like, what's going on under that? Same thing with the snapping back culture that you were talking about. It's like, your body could snap back, but what about your mind?
Right.
And people don't see that part, nor do a lot. Now it's better.
Right.
But at least back in the day, everyone snap back.
Right.
But this person could have been so depressed, and you have no idea, and you're just happy that they have a flat stomach.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like you said, bringing all that attention to that snapback culture and bringing it to your mind as well, and having that conversation is not just your body, is so important.
You're right about that. I totally agree, because you know what they say, where the mind goes, the body follows. And, you know, things can look so nice on the outside, but if you're broken, right, and if you're struggling to get through day to day or do things, and you know, I feel like that can be more like difficult and, you know, have longer lasting effects, you know. So I agree.
Right.